Painting with Menoth John is presented in Super Legitivision. Super Legitivision, the future of podcasting. It's .com.
Hello, I'm
Menoth John.
and I'd like to welcome you. First of all, let me take just a moment to thank you for allowing me back into your homes. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation for you to drag out your
miniatures
and paint along with us each week. Let's go over to the canvas here and let's get started. I believe, every day's a good day when you paint. I believe, it'll bring a lot of good thoughts to your heart. I believe, every day's a good day when you paint. I believe, it'll bring a lot of good thoughts to your heart. Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees. There are no limits here. You start out by believing here. You can almost paint with anything. All you have to do is practice.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, all you have to practice, and practice makes perfect unless you're this shit show. Welcome to the Sunday Night Extravaganza. By God, I am Menoth John. Last time I checked, I've got a Social Security card, and I know how to use it, bitches. I will use that in years to come, as I'm not quite that old. But you have tuned in. It's Sunday night. You have found us. As hard as we have tried to hide on the internet. So, you know, John, I have with us, of course, the co-host with the mo-host. You know him as Mr. John Spencer. Do you know?
Hello.
There you go. Now we're ready to go because we got the hi-yo going. Did you know that the Social Security card is not only for old people, John?
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, it's for old people and people that are not quite so old, and I'm not quite so old. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been your governmental update for the Painting with Menoth John show. Holy shit, John, we've got a stranger in the house.
We do.
Yes, ladies
It's
and
okay. I'm also named John.
Oh my
So
God.
we won't get confused.
It's John and John and John. It's like Johnception here, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know, we're going to only charge you for 2 Johns tonight. You're going to get the 3rd John for free. And we, of course, are here at the Painting with Menoth John show, and we are very pleased to welcome Mr. John Carter.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here, John.
Well,
I
that's...
feel like I'm in Jurassic Park. Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John.
Exactly. It's either Jurassic Park or a terrible fucking Monty Python skit. So, you know...
I'm honestly, I'm okay with either.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, John, you are with us tonight because we are going to pimp the shit out of your Kickstarter that we're going to talk about here in a very, very short amount of time. Is there anything else that you'd like the listeners out there to know about you as a person?
I got to go see the John Carter movie for free.
Well, that's good. I actually am a fan of that movie. I enjoy it very much.
I am too. No,
I'm
they
also a
were.
fan.
Disney was doing an online promotion where if your name was legally John Carter and you could prove it, you got to go see the movie for free.
Well, that's...
And I was able to do that. I got to go see it, and then I was in a theater of a bunch of other John Carters. Like in the parking lot on the way, a guy was just sitting there waiting. I'm like, John Carter? He's like, John Carter? It was this really weird situation. And once I sat down, I'm like, this is really cool. I'm in a theater full of John Carters. I'm like, what if it's a trap? Like, what if they just wanted all the John Carters in the Central Florida area in one area, and I'm about to die. And instead, we watched the movie, and I enjoyed myself.
You know, the weird thing about the John Carter movie, and usually we don't go to the media section this early in the show.
I apologize for preemptively.
Don't worry about it. We don't really have a format. You know, the weird thing about it is that they chose that as their promotional scheme, and yet, you know, Frozen, they sold like 40 billion copies of a really horseshit soundtrack. And in John Carter, they couldn't get 14 people to go see, and the 14 that saw it were all named John Goddamn Carter.
We got to see it for free. That's why we saw it.
Yeah, nice way to go, Disney. Yeah, thumbs up. All right, well, you know, the first thing we do want to talk about this right off the get-go with John, because we can't truly have our usual beverage update until we talk about, of course, yes, we're talking about it, Loaded Dice. And I'm going to go right ahead here. I'm going to put up on the screen the Kickstarter. Folks, this is a Kickstarter that you want to back. And it's a reasonable one, and you're going to get some super sweet glassware out of it. John, tell us a little bit about what makes this super sweet glassware super extra sweet.
Well, I'll do more than that. I'll show you how good it is. Hold on.
There it goes. It unfroze.
Okay, there we
It
go.
unfroze.
I just had a stutter on my side, so I wanted to make sure everything was good. So here is, as you can see, I've already been imbibing.
Yes.
But here is the glassware. So loaded dice is basically a die represented in class format. So a pint glass represents a D20, and on the back are the numbers 1 through 20 running down the side. So if I had, what you do is you fill it up and then you chug. And if I had chugged, this is currently at 12, so I would have rolled a 12 if I had done that in one chug. But I'm a wuss and I just sip.
Well, we tend to really try to emphasize responsible alcohol drinking on this show, except for 90 minutes starting at 7 p.m. on Sunday night till 8:30. But there you go. There is the link in there for Moonova. By the way, hey Moonova, good to see you. I've got another picture here to put up also with the loaded dice. And let me see if I can get it up here. There's a picture of the loaded dice there with beer in it, which is super sweet. But I really like that picture that shows all of the different shot glasses. You've got like a highball glass. You've got the classic pint. You have maybe more of an English pint glass there, the D10.
The D10 is actually a tumbler. It's smaller.
Oh,
it's not that family shot isn't to scale really.
Okay.
But the D20 is a pint glass. The D12 is an old fashioned. The D10 is a tumbler. The D8 is a beer sampler. The D6 is a double shot glass, and the D4 is a classic shot glass.
I don't know how I can not have all of these on my shelf in Ron's Pub. I have to be very honest with you.
I know, right?
These are wonderful. These are super sweet, guys. So there you go, folks. Loaded dice. There's this. We have had John went ahead and put the Kickstarter actual address there in the chat room, so you can just click it right there. Make sure you get your ass back here because we got a whole bunch of show for you tonight. But this is one to definitely back. $50 for the whole family, or how much was it for just the one pint glass?
$12.
$12, and it's got a fancy screen print of it on a D20 Plus. You can get yourself all screwed up when you play your next. Think about infinity with this. I mean, you can drink to a crit anytime you want.
So
And
you gotta be
it's
skillful because you can't just look at it while you're drinking. That's not easy. So
Mhm.
there's some skill in that.
it's
practice.
high quality glass. It's actually like you can scratch on the glass. The paint is not coming off. It's microwave proof. It's dishwasher safe. This is something that's good to go. It's a quality product. And that's my Billy Mays throwdown right there.
Yeah. It will last longer than me. I'm just going to put that out there. So there you go. All right. Well, if I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing with our viewers here this amazing new product that will allow them to get literally drunker than they have any business to be drunk. So with that in mind, folks, as you may or may not be aware of, John, we have a little toast at the beginning of the show to all of our patrons and all of our listeners. And this one's for you, John. Hey, Ron.
Ron. I rolled a 4.
I rolled a 4 also.
Mine's empty. It's a 20. It's not how it
You
works.
rolled
I
a
cheated.
20 over the pre-ramble, tough guy. All right.
I took 20.
Well, I'll tell you what, John.
Old
I'm
school
gonna
joke.
cut you loose here. Then I'm gonna let you hang up off of the Skype. But thank you very much for coming on and being a part of our pre-ramble. We have
It's my pleasure.
We have some wonderful conversations with John during the pre-ramble that if you decide to back the show at the $1 level at patreon.com/menothjohn, you will get to hear the rest of it. So, Mr. Carter, have a wonderful evening, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah. All right.
All right, there we did. We just had a thing there, and it actually worked. That's the first time we've ever done anything like that, John.
It can't go wrong for us all the time, John.
Oh, I could. We're that good. What did you have for your beverage, by the way?
Well, I had Captain Morgan's Cannon Blast, and I've got another one because of what day it is.
Oh yeah, folks, we have to thank you for reminding us, John. I'm going to pour one out more. You know, this is quite a day for the United States. And on September 11th, some horrible people who do not embrace the best parts of this particular show's philosophy decided to run a couple of planes into New York, and one plane went down in Pennsylvania, and one went into the Pentagon. And we're going to take a minute to a little bit of silence, and we're going to pour one out for our homies. Hey, Ron.
Ron.
All right, folks. And that was actually at the 11-minute mark, by the way, which was interesting. Just happened that way. All right, folks. Let's that's enough of the somber. Let's get back to the shenanigans.
Back to the fun.
Back to the fun times. You know, John, we've had our beverage update. We've had our loaded dice talk with Mr. Carter, and now it's time for the poll of the show.
The poll of the show.
You know why?
I should be on the winning one this time.
Yep. Polling show. We asked 42 respondents. You know, folks, if you would like to help guide this show, one of the great ways you can do that is by following @MenothJohn on the Twitters. Every Saturday, I will release a poll of the show. It'll have something to do. Might help decide the course of the show, just like this one did. So if you're hearing my voice, follow me. And then vote. It's very simple. And I promise it's going to be more accurate than the 2016 election. And there are less idiots in it, for sure. PwMJ poll of the show. What technique would you like to see demonstrated on the next PwMJ? John, I have to be very honest. I was sweating this one out.
Yeah, you're not quite ready for the airbrush base coating, are you?
I'm not exactly ready for the airbrush base coating, but I would have pulled it off. What I probably would have had to do is do the show off of the painting cam, and then I would have had to stretch a camera across the room over there, and I would have done it, though. I have no idea how I would have handled the audio. Not even the slightest idea how I would have handled the audio.
Yell very loud.
So, this is the part where you use the airbrush. Yeah, exactly. That would have been horrible. But anyway.
But it all does show that they want to see that, so when you eventually get that rig set up over there, we got an episode.
Yeah, we sure do, and I will do that. You know, because we've talked to Russ Wakeland from the D6 Generation a little bit about the airbrushing. He's having some fun with it. He and his daughter are doing it, and super excited to see that they are taking to it. They have done the right thing, John. They went out and bought Vallejo Model Air paints. That's the right way to do it.
Which is also point out, you can brush paint with, and they are very good paints.
Oh yeah, they're even the Badger Minotaur stuff actually works pretty good. It is thin, and that's okay because you want a thinner paint when you're painting because you don't want it to glop up on you. So
but don't use it with your wet palette in that case because it gets a bit too watery. Unless you really want to try those really wet coats and do a ton of them. Not the best idea.
Yeah, for sure. That is a pro tip there from the mighty right hand of the podcast. So we're going to talk about highlighting tonight. Washes and dry brushing probably are more well known as techniques, and are maybe ones that people probably don't struggle with as much.
Though I find actually in my case even I knew what dry brushing was. I still wasn't for a long time doing it exactly right. Little things you don't think about sneak in there. So we could do an episode on that or a bit on that eventually.
Yeah, and just real quickly, I want to talk, while we're talking about dry brushing a little bit, I'm just going to quick show a little bit of an update from one of the models I was working on this week before we get into the business. Because we all know what happens when the fucking business happens.
Yeah.
We're on full down lockdown when the business happens. So this is my castigator that I was working on this week. Now, one of the things that I did with this model is I did some pretty strong highlighting to emphasize where the plates were kind of creased on the metal. Mm-hmm. I wanted to really show that. And I've been working a lot, John, with really bold highlights, and I'm going to talk about that during the course of the show tonight because that's a bravery test. And,
yeah.
And it'll work out for you better than you think, but that's going to be the thing we're going to emphasize tonight.
That angle you have it at, that's the money shot for that highlight.
It really is. It really
brings out everything perfectly.
So one of the things that I did, though, is I use the P3 blending chart, the one that gives you the highlights, the shades, and then the really big highlights. And when I put that on here, it was too strong. It was just too strong. And so what I did with a dry brush, and this is my dry brush that I like to use a lot. This is it's a piece of shit Army Painter brush, but what I like about it is that it's got a very sharp chiseled end on it. And I like a square tip on my brush for the dry brush. I just have good luck with that. And
That's what you should dry brush with, honestly.
No, there you go. And John, actually, from a technique standpoint, because of your days with Games Workshop, I know you've had a lot more actual instruction in painting than I have. A lot of the things I've discovered, I've kind of discovered by accident. But
I only have instruction because I listen to people. They never actually taught me how to paint because I didn't go through retail. I came in through the mail order area.
So
Stuck in the side door.
There you go. Well, that's okay. This is a Minotaur paint that I used the airbrush to airbrush base coat this guy, and it's called Innards is what it's called. And then I use it's a really good proxy as an airbrush paint for Sanguine base, and then I wash it with the Agrix Earthshade to bring it down a little bit closer to the Sanguine, and then I use Sanguine highlight, and this is actually. I kind of tried to wet blend it a little bit to get up to where it is here. But when I did that highlight, I got a little crazy, and it got a little bit too sharp. And so what I used was I used the Sanguine highlight with a dry brush technique, and it just to soften these highlights a little bit. And it really worked out great. So, folks, we're going to talk about some highlighting techniques tonight on the show. And I just wanted this particular model, I think more than any model I've done in the recent past, it challenged me from a bravery standpoint, and it challenged me from a satisfaction standpoint. And the thing that I want to comment on it is that I was very sad about this model until I dull coated it. And the thing about these airbrush paints is sometimes they go on a little bit shiny, and you have to get past that. And you go ahead and I airbrush sealed this with a matte sealer from Vallejo, and it worked out beautifully. So don't get sad. I did a little OSL on this model. Did a little back here on the engine. You can see a little bit of glow coming off of the back of the engine pod here. A little bit of glow. I'll show you his butt over here. There's a little bit of glowing butt. And I put a little glow on the pipes. I love how the pipes turned out. So, funny thing about pipes for hot stuff, they tend not to be metallic. They tend to be wrapped with some type of a protective insulation. So that's why I didn't do this as a metallic type color. I did this as a typically sometimes these things are a cream color in some industries. So that's why I chose a cream color, and then I washed it with the Agrix Earthshade, got it nice and brown, and then I re-highlighted it with some very much whiter colors, and it makes a big difference. It gives it that poofy look.
Yeah, I usually go with a cream color or gray as good neutral colors too.
Yep, exactly. So I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. Guys, Flight Medic is giving you some tips out there, and I'm going to tell you, you pay attention to that guy, and we'll talk about him in the business. So, all right, folks, we have John. Did you know that we have sponsors?
We do have sponsors. Some of them even know that they sponsor us.
We do have that confirmed now. That is absolutely confirmed, and that's not even with exclamation points or nothing. That's 100% confirmed that we have sponsors, and all of the people who are sponsors of this show, we have confirmed recently, John. It's not even a matter of them having known that they were sponsoring us when they said that they were sponsoring us. They have confirmed recently that they sponsor us and don't hate it or don't regret it.
Much.
They don't regret it as far as... I didn't really ask them if they regretted it. I'm kind of making that up. But, they could be regretting it, and I wouldn't know. I have a shiny nose tonight, by the way. I need to put some makeup on when I'm going to do this show. I'm going to put a powder on. Anyway.
I have a slightly shiny forehead, but you can tell them more because of the lack of hair on top.
Well, we're fucking raw. We're uncut shit. If we walked into a major studio and said, you know what, God damn it, CBS, you're putting the Painting with Men Off John show on, and we're going to take that makeup and you just shove it. That's what we would say. So because we're in control. God damn it. But you know what else we're in control of, John? We're in charge. We're in control of our sponsors. Our sponsors are numerous and important. But what's really important is, first off, to talk about is patreon.com/menothjohn. Do you know, John, that 9 out of 10 orthodontists would use patreon.com/menothjohn as their primary funding source for insurance providers if that was indeed a service that it offered?
Because that 10th one's a dick.
10th one's a dick, bitches. I'm going to tell you what, you can't pay attention to that stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, patreon.com/menothjohn. It's better than fluoride. And if you go ahead and you subscribe to our channel at the $1 level, you will get to hear everything else that John Carter had to say. He will tell us the secret behind the special light that makes airplanes fly and in the movie. And the thing about the green people with the arms, all of the arms. He knows about those, and he talks about them or doesn't in the pre-ramble. One of those two conditions takes place in that pre-ramble. It's some of the best comedy that you've heard since Eddie Murphy Raw, or perhaps not as good. Anyway, but, you know, there's special stuff, too. You know, John, you have a podcast, too.
Somehow I do, actually.
You do, and it's called Co-Host Corner. And we have new graphics for the Co-Host Corner that enhance the experience.
Absolutely, and thanks to whichever Brushhead got those together, because you didn't tell me who it was.
Oh, shitballs. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to him. He's doing some graphics for us because he's building up his portfolio. Yeah, which
Sweet.
is amazing, and I love that guy. And
I don't know if I want to use his full name, because I can get his real name off the email, but I don't know if we want to use that.
I should clear that first. I'll have our legal department call him. And by legal department, I mean my dog Zaza. So,
well, for now, let's just call him Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the graphics for Co-Host Corner.
That's great. It's dramatic. And, John, you still haven't heard the first episode with music, have you?
Nope.
God damn it. I'd like to know how I can make that happen. You know what we'll do? Here, John. Here, I'll make you a deal.
Uh-oh.
Subscribe to the patreon.com/menothjohn at the $2 level, and I will add that to your cut.
Sure, I'll do that.
There
That
you go.
sounds good.
I'll cut you back out of it. Jesus.
I'm paying myself.
It's like money laundering for podcasters.
Well, plus look at all the Patreon updates, which is actually honestly is probably a good idea. All told.
There you go. So you got that going for us. So, you know, Co-Host Corner. What was in the last Co-Host Corner, John? Update the Brushheads.
The last one or the one that's coming out? Because I just recorded one on Thursday.
Well, why don't you tell us what's coming out, and that way they can know what's coming out.
I got an new section coming out in Co-Host
shit.
Corner. That's right, a third section.
Oh shit!
That dealing with it's gonna be random stuff, but for now it's other games by War Machine Hordes and why I like them is the early part of it.
Nice.
So in this current one, I'm talking about Malifaux and what I like about Malifaux, in addition to an entire rundown on the Swamp Gobber River Raiders and what casters and solos and units and all to use them with for a better effect.
I'm going to tell you this right now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone that's listening to my voice is sitting down. This is the only podcast that is covering the River Raiders right now. We are exclusive in that respect. I promise you this. Do you believe that, John?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. You had a slight look of disbelief. I wanted to check in with my partner. On top
I
of...
was trying to do something, and the internet's being the internet.
All right, well, internet, stop that thing that you're doing. You know, the other thing that you're going to get is a brand new thing. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have heard of Brush Chewer. She's from Scotland, John. Did you know that Scotland is a country that exists in Europe?
You know, absolutely.
Scotland is at least a country that is close to England in some ways. Along parts of it, at least, are close. And Brush Chewer was the guest of the amazing Foxy Brown on the inaugural issue of From the Velvet Lounge with Foxy Brown. That is available at the $2 level, just like the Co-Host Corner. We talk about women in gaming, because that's been a hot topic lately, John. Did you realize that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. It is a hot fucking topic. And we have some very frank and controversial discussions about it. And Foxy Brown has some very frank and controversial viewpoints on the issue and the matter, and he would like to teach you how to not to be a deek. So there you go, and Mr. Foxy Brown will be all over that. We're also going to be getting some stickers. Actually, they're magnets, folks, that you will be able, they're going to be outdoor safe. You're going to be able to put them on your car and not fuck up your paint job. It's going to be amazing. Working on those. And then at the $5 level, John, this is rarefied air. We're almost out of the Crony Inner Circle bottle openers. If you become a $5 member within the next 3 people who become that, you will get a Crony bottle opener. But they're never going to be made again, folks. Never, ever going to make these again because the company that makes them is a horrible, sexist company, and we don't want to be a part of that anymore. But we are going to make, for future ones, we're going to make tape measures with our logo on it. And that way people, when you're whipping that tape measure out, and you're like, look at that, I'm pre-measuring, and there's Painting with Menoth John, so you know my shit's legit. And I didn't pay like some Sri Lankan sweatshop to paint my stuff because I paint it because that's what I watch with Painting with Menoth John. And that's coming at the $5 level. $10 level, I don't think we'll ever find another Chili Winners. But we've got one. And he's amazing, and he will allow, at the $10 level, you get to pick something for the spokesmodel to say when we do a spokesmodel. So there you go. We do have other sponsors, though, John.
We do have a couple other sponsors.
I think I should be more drunk for this segment in the future.
I don't know. I think let's mix it up. This time, go with the mostly sober, just to throw people off. You don't want them to think you got tendencies or anything.
No, that's very true. We don't want this segment to become known as the cry for help. So, do you know, John, that in Canada they have terrain?
I am quite aware of that, actually.
The Rocky Mountains go right the fuck through Canada. It's like it crosses the border like it gives. The Rockies go through the border with Canada in a way that makes Donald Trump stay up at night. And, they tried to build a wall around Canada one time, but that country's big. I mean, really big.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so they didn't have the money for that, and they stopped after drilling a couple post holes and went, wow, this is going to take a long time. But Adam from Greenleaf Terrain saw that effort and was inspired by it, John. And that guy creates terrain that would have been like the wall that they would have built around Canada had they actually built it.
Absolutely.
It was inspired by the effort to build a wall around Canada after the War of 1812. And, that didn't happen, but Adam from Greenleaf Terrain did happen. And he'll build houses. He'll build, he'll build you one of those fire, they have those new forests that are on fire for War Machine. He'd build you one of those if you asked him. He'd put metric fire on it too. All of those, all the temperatures would be ridden. If you had a infrared temperature gun, you could take a picture of one of his pieces of terrain, and it would read in Celsius. If you had the infrared gun set up to read in Celsius, because of all the metric temperatures he has inside of it. Did you know that you get if you're using metric terrain that you get plus 24 defense from a linear obstacle?
I did not know that.
Yeah. You got to convert your dice over though too, so that makes it less interesting. But Greenleaf Terrain, Adam at Greenleaf Terrain, reach out to him. He'll build shit for you. He'll send it to you. It'll clear customs most times, and it'll get to you. KR Multicase, John, is the dairy product of all time. I'm from Wisconsin, John. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was aware of that.
We in Wisconsin we have cows, and we're proud of it. California has cows too, but they're not legit. Fuck those cows. and God damn it, KR Multicase. If you put your stuff in KR Multicase, it's like rubbing butter on your models. It'll slick them right up. And then you could, but you better if you use dull coat on your product, then the butter won't sink in and fuck up your paint. But KR Multicase is a good way to keep your models from getting fucked up, unlike Rabblebaum. Rabblebaum is like rubbing your model against someone who's old, because they're all dry and chafy, and it's like You'd be better off to use a. You'd be better off to like take your model and with a cheese grater, and go like that, and then put it in Ravelboom. That shit sucks. Not like KR Multicase. KR Multicase is like the Crown Royal velvet bag of stuff to put your miniatures in. They have pluck foam. They have foam that's the right shape right out of the box. They have a website now that you can look at, and you can look up what faction or game you play, and it'll just tell you, just buy this stuff. And you should listen to it, because that computer's smart. It's got radar, and it'll know what to do.
Oh, my God.
And if you get that reference, you're old and you watch terrible television from the 80s. So Flight Medic painting is different than KR Multicase. John, were you aware of that?
Yes, sir, I was.
Yep, they paint stuff. You know, Flight Medic painting has literally singles of persons who paint for them, and he paints a model if you send it to him, or I bet you could pay him to put it together even if it was a complicated model. He's like, oh, fuck that shit. I need somebody to put this together. Just contact Flight Medic Painting, but it's going to be like until 2042 before he gets to it because he's all booked up. He hurt himself, but he's getting better. He's on the mend, and while he's on the mend, he's painting. He talked to Santa about getting extra elves, and Santa said, "Fuck that, Christmas is coming." So he's still down to one person, and but he paints the shit out of stuff. John, were you aware that green is one of the colors of the spectrum?
Yes, I was.
It's the G in Roy G. Biv, and they put They Might Be Giants put out a song about it, and that was super legit and totally sweet. So this segment's running long. So anyway, Flight Medic painting for stuff that's green, yellow. Roy G. Biv is his motto, and he'd paint something for you if he had the time. Clockwork Phoenix next week. By the way, folks, we're gonna have DC on from Clockwork Phoenix Games to talk about his new card game that we are now a part of the marketing plan for.
Yay!
Yay, legit. By the way, folks, in case you got scared by that last vision, my arm did not just suddenly get decapitated when I left that television green screening. I'm just warning you. I don't want anybody to be scared at home, John, that someone had cut my arm off. So, anyway, so the Clockwork Phoenix Games, DC is going to be on here. He's going to tell us all about that game. It's going to be super sweet and totally legit. It's set in the Guild Ball universe. David D.C. Clark is one of the 6 best people I know from Bellevue, and there you go. And one of them's actually in the chat room right now. The Dream Maker, he's another guy. Although I don't think you're from Bellevue, but anyway, the Dream Maker is the guy, by the way, that he's making Lola, and he made those sweet Phoenix swords that you may have seen from the Lock and Load things. That guy's a fucking craftsman. I wish he sponsored our show, because then I could talk about how amazing he is, but I'm not going to say anything else about him until he brings it correct. So, because I'm a pimp, but nobody works for free in this dojo. All right, folks, that's the business. I was pretty sober, too, and it still went off the rails hard.
I don't even have the words for what happened there.
Yeah. It's a dairy thing.
I got the words.
Hey, Ron. Yep, there you go. I'm just going to drink out of the bottle. I mean, let's be honest.
I am. I got this giant thing of Smirnoff Ice.
There you go. All right, so we're going to get on the painting cam, because this show ought to be about something, right, John?
Absolutely.
All right, so we already talked about this guy. He's super legit. I'm going to turn him the money shot. I like that term, the money shot.
Money shot.
All right, so we got to talk about highlighting and stuff tonight, John, because that's what we have to do.
That's what we're here for.
Yep. Patreon.com/MenothJohn. You go get that, Dream Maker. All right.
It's so easy, even I can find it.
Oh, fucking! We've had squirrels sign up, and they don't even have computers. So there you go. You got to get a nut to move that butt. That's what.
I should have gotten the rats to sign up for me. That'd have been awesome. Get my face and patch on the keyboard and just.
There you go. They'd probably sign you up at the $100 level.
They might. They don't really like me picking them up, though.
That's like,
I'm a food machine to them. They're like, you bring me food! Bring me food!
That's like at the $100 level, Menoth John flies out and does sexual favors or something. I don't know.
Let's not get too far in. Someone might take you up on that offer, sir.
Actually, they probably pay me. I'd have to pay them $100 or something. I don't know. Whatever. This is going to a weird place. Let's not do that anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So
Eject.
All right. So there we go. All right. So yes, make sure to start with zenithal shading. So like this, folks. Boom. There you go. This is a properly primed model, and or at least what I think is maybe a little over highlighted, but it's something. So we want to talk about the process that happens after you're done base coating. I think, folks, we've talked an awful lot about priming on various shows. I mean, I suggest you get over to the D6 generation. We talk about priming and stuff like that. These are all airbrush primed using the Badger Styrolene's primer that I'm a huge fan of. Then I come back with the gray, and I come at a 45-degree angle to kind of give you some, and it really does make a big difference in the shading of your product. Now, this is a Myrmidon, as you can see, and this is a Manticore, right, John?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say, so there you go. So this has actually just been airbrush paint primed, airbrush base coated with a green color, and then I came back and I did a little bit of highlighting. But you know what, John? You can barely tell that I highlighted it.
Yeah, it's subtle enough you can't tell from through the camera.
You can see a little bit down here on the edge, and you can see a little bit lighter up towards the top. But that's not usually enough to make an impact at that 3 or 10 foot kind of level that you want to. You look at the highlighting I've done on here, and this is the product that we're eventually going to shoot for on this particular model. And it's going to be a little bit more challenging because with a retribution model, it's a lot more difficult to get these sharp. You don't ever get these sharp lines. But
not really.
I'm going to show you. Yes, it's Ortic Olive is one of the colors that I did, and I found an equivalent in their airbrush line. Actually, I think I may have actually airbrushed this with Ortic Olive out of the pot, to be honest. That stuff is so thin that you can actually airbrush with it. So, I also came back and I did some washes, and that's why you've got some of the dark lining here. I've come back with Agrax Earth Shade on the knee here, down here, and just on the parts where it was the lighter colors. On the blades, I came back with the Reichland Flesh Shade that I like to use. It's the base color is the Rulik Gold from Privateer. And then I came back with the Reichland Flesh Shade, which is a wash from Citadel. And I washed each of these different blades, anything that was the copper color. And that really works out good. Now, why am I talking about all this when we're talking about detailing, John? Is because this sets the stage for the next level, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you go online, and if I had been like a dedicated podcaster, I would have actually gotten an image to throw up at this point. But there is, if you Google search for P3, what's it called? P3 color chart or P3 paint chart. Maybe, John, if you can do a quick Google search on that. You know the chart I'm talking about, the one that has all the different color swatches on it?
I haven't seen it, actually.
Oh.
But I do see it right here on a P3 paint chart. I'll get you that Google real quick.
Yep, P3 paint chart. And what that does is that gives you what colors you want to use as highlights and lowlights on these different things. So shades and highlights. I'm going to talk about a few different things here tonight on ways to make your model pop, because that's what this next stage is all about. This could be fielded easily in a hardcore tournament if it was based. No problem. And no one would bat an eye. But if you want to take it to the next level, you really have to do a lot more of what these next step are. So when you're talking about a retribution model, there's a few things that you have to pay attention to. You have these power gems that are all over the place on them, okay? And for me, the latest thing that I've discovered for working with those are the Citadel line of the technical colors that they have. And I'm going to shake them up here, and I'm going to put them here so you look. There's this one here, which is the Waystone Green. We have the Spirit Stone Red. This would be really wonderful for those Scorn models. And then we have also this paint here, which is the Soulstone Blue. Now, my Retribution so far has been using more of the green colors, And I want to demonstrate on the show here tonight how to apply these and kind of how to make them work for you a little bit. And I'm not going to spend all the time talking about this because I just wanted, there's a lot of these things to do on this model. And I just want to demonstrate the technique a little bit because Brush Chewer is actually the one that originally told me about this and how to use these. So you open them up, and the first thing you're going to notice about these is that they're very thick. They are much thicker than normal paint. And the reason for that is because of the way that they flow. Now, John, I have fallen in love with my Raphael 8404 series brushes. These are really working for me these days, and it's all about how you take care of them. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show. But you take this technical paint, and what you want to do is you want to put a fair amount on it. You want to not load it up, but you want to put a fair amount. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to brush it on here. I'm not going to talk a whole lot, but I'm going to brush it on here. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to bring it up to the top of the gem. And I'm just going to make sure that all of the silver, now this is on a cold steel base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add more to the bottom half of it. And just kind of smooth it out a little bit. And then I'm going to just leave it. And what's going to eventually happen is that because of the way this stuff flows, it's actually going to flow down and it's going to give you the proper highlight at the top. Now, I'm going to help it a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit off. I'm going to wipe a little bit here, and then I'm going to just kind of smooth it out a little bit. It takes a little bit of screwing around with.
And don't use them over large areas. Trust me.
No.
Trust.
Do not try to paint an entire model in this paint.
No.
And, of course, the most important part is to get the bottom of it a little bit darker because, and I'm sorry my audio is probably turning a little bit to shit here because I'm a little bit away from my microphone, but I want to really demonstrate that I'm just kind of bringing it in on the bottom there because that is how the gem would normally work. Okay? Now I'm going to do one more of them here so you can kind of see what you're doing. And we'll paint the whole gem first. And I'm going to let that get into that edge of the recess of this little round a little bit too. I'll probably come back with like a very dark, like a black, almost a black lining type of technique when I'm done with it, just to kind of to give a little definition to the gem because that makes it really look a little bit more realistic even. And we're just going to go ahead and put a little bit more down on the bottom half on this one. We're just going to touch it up, and I hope that's coming across on the camera decent. Okay. And I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And then what that's going to do is as that sits, it's going to run down towards the bottom of the gem a little bit, and that's going to really make it a really outstanding looking gem when it's done. I've been using this now for a little bit. Here's an example of one down here. If you look at the very bottom of the Castigator, you can see that bottom has a gem in it, and you can see the lighter top and the more dark bottom and the darker rim around it. And that really makes for a very convincing thing. Here, I'm going to try and I'll hold this up even a little bit closer to the camera so you can get a little bit more of a zoom in. Okay? I'll see if I can't. Whoops. Let me see here. I might be able to adjust the focus even a little bit better on this one. Let's see if I can do that.
Nope. I see it. It's pretty good.
Pretty good? Okay. All right.
From here, and this is perfect distance, it looks like a gem, and that's what you're going for.
Yep. So that's how I'm doing those. Now that's one of the things that I do when I'm highlighting is that, or this portion of it where I'm actually finishing the model, is I want to go back and I'm going to do every one of these little power nodes kind of like that. The detailing work is going to be a lot of work. It's going to take a long time, but
no doubt.
It's the money shot. This is the stuff that that you want to spend your time on. Now, there's another part here that I like to do, and that is I've got these golds, right? Well, what really makes these golds pop is after I've taken the Roulet gold and I've washed it down with the Reichling Flesh Shade. what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take a little bit of gold. I'm going to use my dry brush on it here. And I like to put a dry brush of solid gold, which is more of a traditional bright, shiny gold. This is a Vallejo. This is polished gold from the Game Color line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and I'm going to dry brush onto the blade, starting from the top in. I'm going to do the actual edge of it, and I'm going to keep on working that into that, and I take it a little bit by little bit, because these little bit more of a bronze color really like to feel the touch of that bright gold to give you that highlight on the edge. Okay, I'm going to start with this, and then after I get it to where I want it with that gold, and I'm going to turn, you notice I'm turning the model so that as I dry brush, I've got a little bit more of an edge on kind of a feel to it. And what that does is that helps control where your dry brush is going to, so that you don't end up with the dry brush in the wrong place. And you notice also that I'm bringing the highlight to the tip. I'm increasing the amount of gold that I'm applying as it comes down to these sharp points, because that's where the light would be catching it. The whole, the devil's in the details when it comes to doing this highlighting, because you want to think about how do things catch the light. And this is one way that you can, by bringing that brighter product right to the edge. Now, what you might also want to do is to take your liner brush. This is a 0, and I'm just going to take a little bit of the bright gold, and I am going to write a line, and I'm going to really emphasize where that break point is for the edge. And this is where we talked about in the pre-ramble a little bit, but where highlighting takes some courage, because you spend all this time base coating this model and getting it ready to party, and you put the shades on it, and then you get to this moment where you need to really, really be courageous and add these really bold highlights. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is don't be satisfied with that. Don't be satisfied with that, because what you want to do then is you want to take a silver, and this is as you continue to highlight more and more, you're going to want to shift to colors that are maybe a little bit more bold, and just kind of catch the very top of it. And you're going to just kind of bring it across. Can't talk and paint at the same time sometimes.
No, you're doing fine.
Bring it like that.
Yeah. Flightmatic and Brush Tour said that too. You want to hit the exact edge with a silver just to get that right highlight.
Yep, and I may have overdone it a little bit on that one. I may have put a little bit more in there. But you know what you can always do? What you can always do is take a little bit of that gold with your dry brush and just give it a little bit of love.
Mm-hmm.
And feather it a little bit. And what that's going to do... Go ahead.
And honestly, overdoing it, GW's made a thing of painting models by overdoing it for years.
Yep. Now, I do need a little bit of silver up here towards the top, because if I'm going to do it this far, I might as well take it to its logical conclusion, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll take it all the way up. And then, and this was something that I know that I really saw with my castigator, was that I needed to kind of come back here and feather out some of this a little bit. Now, I've got a really stark contrast there between, and you can see it very clearly, is it might be a little bit too stark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my base color, because the base color has been washed with that red a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the original base color and my small dry brush, and I'm going to come in here with that, get a little bit on my dry brush, and then I'm just going to come back and I'm going to catch the other side of that silver with the original color and help it to blend back in a little bit. And just kind of nudge it in there a little bit. And that's helping to control that sharp edge a little bit and it gives a little bit more depth to that, because what it does is that then you don't have the stark transition from the silver to the very dark, and it looks really pretty good at this point.
And honestly, if you're a little hesitant to edge highlight with a regular brush, you can use your dry brush. It just takes a lot longer to do it, to build the color up.
Yep.
You can take your dry brush and edge highlight with that. Works in a little well, and just takes a little longer, but it's a little safer, a little less, I don't want to say brave, but a little less chance of you totally going crazy and getting all over the place like I love to do.
There you go. And so this is just that's, and then you end up with something that looks. I'll try not to get the brightness of the light on it, so it's kind of shiny right now. But you end up with something like that, and that is honestly where you're looking to kind of drive some of your highlights on these models. Now, the next one I want to demonstrate here for highlighting is, let's talk about what's going on down on these little kneecaps down here. Okay, and right now this was not Thrall Base. This was Hammerfall Khaki, and then I washed it down with Agrax Earthshade. And it pooled a little bit, and that's fine. And sometimes you don't want that pooling, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off my dry brush. And I wish I had a fresh dry brush, because it turns out dry brushing works better with a dry brush.
That was what I alluded to in the preamble, that dry brushing is not always as easy as you think, because dry brushing with a wet brush gives you a somewhat different effect than dry brushing with a dry brush.
And it's not always necessarily the one you were shooting for.
Exactly.
So I'm going to...
L. Marshall taught me that one.
I'm going to try and dry this as best I can, and it won't be good enough. I'm going to be very honest with you, because the dry brush really does need to be dry. But I'm going to take a little bit of Hammerfall Khaki here, and I'm going to put, which is the original color, and I'm going to just a touch of fudge on there. I'm just going to put a little bit of that on there, and I'm going to just dry brush that little pooled area to try and get rid of it a little bit, because that pooling is not as attractive as I would want it to be. So we're just gonna brush that up a little bit.
And honestly, dry brush is one of the few brushes I'll buy in multiples for the same exact size, just because of that. Or if you don't want to and you've got a hair dryer around, obviously I don't need one with this kind of hair. The hair dryer can dry it off quickly too. Honestly, if you're modeling, especially with Restic and all, the hair dryer should be part of your kit because of bendy stuff.
Yep.
You can get your dry brush back in a better painting order real quick.
So
without having to buy a second one.
Yep. So I'm just going to dry brush this little pooled area a little bit, just to kind of take the edge off of it a tiny little bit. And you know, pooling is something that is kind of it's a occupational hazard when you're painting a little bit. But I want to get it so that it's not such a sharp transition. I still want those shades, but I don't want such sharp transitions. Now that I've done that, I'm going to probably take the next step, and I'm going to look at my P3 chart for what is, and I'm going to look back in the chat room here for that link, because you're legit, John.
Actually, Flight Medic put that up there.
Oh, thanks, Flight Medic. So I'm going to look back on here, and I'm going to take a look and see for Hammerfall Khaki. Let's see here.
Some sort of bone, I'm sure.
Where is Hammerfall Khaki? This is good stuff here.
Good radio. Boom.
Yep. Menoth White Highlight. Okay, so we're going to take a little Menoth White Highlight, and I'm going to bring up this here. Menoth White Highlight, huh?
Extreme,
that's very this table tends to be a little extreme. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to take some Menoth White Highlight. And this is where a wet palette is a big deal. Okay? If you were to take Menoth White Highlight and just put it on there, it would be too much. So I'm going to put a little Menoth White Highlight on my wet palette. And then I'm going to clean off my paintbrush a little bit. Then I'm going to take a little bit of that Hammerfall Khaki, which is the original base color.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put some of that on there.
Mix and paints.
Mix and
That's where
paints.
it's at.
Picks and paints, folks. This is how you do it. So put a little bit on there like that. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm I'm going to want to, whoops, get that off there. I'm going to want to take a little bit of there, put it over here, reach into that Menoth highlight, and I'm just going to mix it to the color that I want it to be. And I do want it to be light, but I don't want it to be like shocking light. And then I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to put some on my brush, and then I'm going to take, and I'm going to come across this top, and I'm going to highlight the front edge of it.
That's what I did with one of the models I painted for Malifaux, the Void Wretch. If you check my my hobby update a couple weeks ago on the website, I had a little purple guy, Void Wretch. Really, really easy to paint because he's a giant piece of nothing, technically. And just kept adding little off-white to the purple for highlights, because of highlights, to sort of get to that end game there.
Yep. And as you can see, I've just added just a little bit of highlight to it. And now I'm going to use that same color that I've done to come across the top of this. And highlight that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on his wrists.
So a lot of people do similar stuff, and they'll do it before they wash, because the highlight will still show up after you wash, but it sort of depends on how extreme you want it and how much time you want to take.
Yep. And the thing that you're going to notice as you're doing this is it's going to scare the living daylights out of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be like, oh my God, I have just wrecked my model. And here's two things to keep in mind. First off, that when you're doing this, it dries differently than what you think it's going to, and it'll calm down a little bit in the drying process. But this will not wreck your model. This is actually going to be something that's going to enhance your model quite a lot.
Also, remember, anything you do to your model with paint, you can undo with paint. That's why you keep your paints nice and watered down, so nothing builds up too much. And even if it does build up too much, I like to keep acetone and a Q-tip around. You can take specific parts of paint off and hit it again.
Yep. And what I just noticed was I had to mix a little extra batch of the highlight paint that I'm using. And because I'm using a wet palette, I could the first little bit I put on there, I didn't like the color of, but I went back and I was able to quick remix a new batch of it. And this is where having a paintbrush that holds a good tip is a big deal. Now see, I got a little bit of a split on my one there, and I'm just going to round it out, and that's all you have to do. You don't panic. You just round it out so that it follows the contour of the section that you're highlighting. There you go. And that's that cream color and now there's plenty of other places that you want to use that too. You want to come across the back here, which is on the bottom. And on that one, I'm picking up that edge, that hard edge that's there on the side. You want to do that. And then you always want to say, where is the model going to catch the light? If I'm talking about a Myrmidon, I'm going to catch that light on those high bits. And you just kind of follow it along the contour. Like back here, if it's sitting underneath an armor plate, it's not going to catch the light as much as it might in other places. And you know what? These are your models, folks. You don't have to be scared. And and then for that, remember how it called out the Menoth white highlight? I'm going to put just the tiniest little bit of that Menoth white highlight right on the edge, just at the very top, and that's gonna plus this up big time.
Boom. We should probably hit some questions soon.
Yeah, let's do that, buddy.
All right. This guy, he doesn't come in here too often. Robert Durevsky.
Love that guy.
He says, do you prefer blends over line highlights? And what are your thoughts on black lining?
Well, a really well blended model is a sight to behold. But I think that, I think that line highlighting has its place also, and I've been experimenting more with line highlighting recently, and I really am enjoying the aesthetic of it. But I think that I don't want to say that I have a favorite. I think I like them both, and I think they both have their place. What about you, John?
I would agree. As an XUW guy, I like line highlighting, but that's also because I believe in the 3-foot rule. I'm generally not painting for a competition, and blending looks so much better when they pick your model up and really start to critique it. And line highlighting is perfect for the 3-foot rule. Like across the table, that shit looks awesome.
Yep, because from 3 feet across, if you don't have a bold highlight on it, you don't really catch as much of it as you'd like. You don't see it as much.
Absolutely.
Got another question?
Oh, I got plenty. This is what some of these are from a couple weeks ago. Some of these are recent. Luis Martinez asked, "How do I come to grips with having to paint more than 50 models?"
You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yep.
I would say that the thing you need to do is, first off, make sure that whatever that grouping of models is there's a driving purpose for you wanting to paint them. So by the way, guys, right now I am dry brushing some silver highlights onto these guys. I like dry brushing silver a lot of times to get my highlights, because it really, I think it turns out very nicely, especially after you've washed it with like a Newland oil or a dark tone by Army Painter. Take it in bites. You cannot sit down and paint 50 models. Start with, and if it's a mixture of units and larger models, try to mix it up. We talk a lot about that on this show. Try to mix it up a little bit. Try to do some bigger models, and then do a unit, and reward yourself then with another model that is maybe a little more heroic and one that is going to trip your fancy a little bit more. Don't fall into that trap of getting bored and things like that. John?
Truth. And if it's all the same type of model, for some reason you need 50 of the same type of model, if there's multiple poses, take all the same pose and paint them at the same time, since it's repetitive. And while that can be boring, it also has the bonus of familiarity. By the time you get through a couple of them, you're like, I know what I'm doing in this model. I can just, breeze through this part, get to the next part, and stage them all if you're doing that, if you got to. That way you can be like, okay, these guys are drying, let me get some stuff on these guys. Okay, these guys are drying, let me get the stuff on these guys. GW units are good for that at 10 men and most PP units, because by the time you're done with the 10th man, the first one's probably in a spot where you can hit him again unless it's a wash.
Yep.
Next is, I'm going to skip that one because that's practically an entire episode, but I want to keep it here because he's asking like all the basic questions on Facebook. Here's Drake Scott. He wants to know, how do you know when you're done with a miniature?
I know that I'm done with a miniature when I look at that miniature and say, if I continue to do much more to this, I'm going to screw it up. I will give you a case in point. The highlighting on this particular model. When I was doing the highlighting on the armor plates, I looked at this and I actually had taken this to a next higher level of highlighting, even beyond this. And I looked at it and I went, nope, I went too far. I went back and corrected a little bit. And then I said, that's enough. I have had enough fun with this model. I'll do the OSL on the fists and things like that and be done with it. And that's when I know that I'm done with a model. John, your thoughts?
I'm done with the model when I'm satisfied, when I've done all the steps, whether as far as I'm willing to go. Example, my Nis Hunters vexed me for so long. I got done with all the base coats. I'm like, yep, they're fucking done. Put them in the case. Eventually, I may go back and finish up the washes and all and some highlights, but not yet. Same with the Kazi. I just finished base coats. I'm not quite sick of them yet, so I might actually go back and do some washes and all before I call them done.
Yep, makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, and to Brian Skinner wants to know, I don't know how old this one is because he has got a weird question. The best way to do base markings, and
Okay.
the thing you most wanting to hear announced at Lock and Load, which I assume is for next year because I don't think it's hanging out that long.
All right, so the best way to do arc markings is I'll show you. Is to have one of these super sweet mats that I'm painting on. And let me show you what I do. Is so, and I hope I can get this on the camera. If you'll notice down here, there is a 90-degree thing here. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that fits a small base perfectly. So if you play, there's a little semicircle here like that. If you put the base against that, you will end up with this point being one arc mark, that point being another arc mark, and this point being the front arc. And
Mhm.
if you, and then what I do is I use a small brush. I use my triple or quadruple zero brush, and I touch, and touch with it just to make a little dot. Then I pick the miniature up, and I will draw the arc mark in, and I rinse the brush out, dry it, and get a fresh paint for each line so that it ends up being very well defined. And that's how I do it. What do you think, John?
I actually own 2 different companies worth of arc marking helpers. I've got Advanced Deployment from back in the day when
Oh,
they
yeah.
were sponsored by Lost Hemisphere, and I'm like, I'll buy some of those. And then I got one from Ironheart Artisans, who used to be in the back of Drop Zone Games. That's actually a little better one because it's got, you put it around the model, it's got both sides in the front, so if you're not sure, you just line it up and go. What I do with them is for the Ironheart, because it's got the 3 marks, I mark the front one myself. I'm like, I want the front arc to be there. Then I line up the guide with that front and paint the sides. And if I have to, I'll go back and touch up the arcs. It's not hard. It's a line. Just touch them up till they look like you want.
Yep, there you go. And folks, do mark your arc markers, folks. It's a big deal.
Mhm.
And it's
It
not,
helps.
It's not that hard.
And if they're not marked, be very generous with your opponent, and they'll generally understand. If there's no reason for your model to be facing away, they're probably not. But just be generous with your opponent if they're not marked.
Absolutely. As
Especially now that back strikes are such a thing.
as Foxy Brown would say, don't be a deek.
Don't be a deek. All right, and what we most want to hear announced at Lock and Load, assuming next year. God, I'd love to have a fucking Merc caster. Boy, wouldn't that be something? New Merc caster to place for most of the Mercs? That'd be awesome. John, what are you looking forward to? Sorry,
Nothing.
a little negative there.
Nothing.
Nothing?
I'm not really looking forward to anything. I mean, I think that we're entering into a very different time for Privateer and for War Machine, to be honest. I think that
I would say a dangerous time.
I agree. I think that we're heading into a time where their release schedule is no longer going to be this thing where a book comes out and it's OMG and everybody gets to look at their new toys, and it's not, Christmas is gone. They've kind of decided that Christmas isn't what it's going to be anymore, and
But that's not terrible because it means they can just release stuff as they get it done and don't have to wait for anything, which is a little good in a way.
if they do that.
Yes,
If they
they
do-
need to.
If they fix their supply chain problem where you know we still don't have an inditer, and we've had an inditer in the books for 1,000 years, if they fix that, then everything will be fine. But if they just continue with this happy horse shit, then I don't give a damn what they announce. My biggest hope for Lock and Load next year is if they're going to do something called a keynote, that they actually have it be a keynote, and they don't play.
That would be good.
They don't cock tease the whole group.
Indeed. Let's go on. Hey, Drake Scott again. He says he's got some questions. Well, let's hold on to that. So, he wants to know what's the best method of painting ice. I don't know if you shared it, John, but there was one going around Facebook a couple weeks back that was a super amazing way to paint ice on a base.
I'd like to.
Did you see that?
I did not see it, and I would like to see it. I can say how I did ice.
Mhm.
So what I did with my ice was, I painted an icy looking base on the base itself with paint. So what I did was I used a Frostbite from Privateer Press, mixed with darker blues and purples to kind of simulate. What I did was I looked at a picture of what ice actually looks like on the internet. And then I went ahead and I painted that onto the base. Then what I did was, as it got closer to the shore, I made it lighter in color because it would, by nature, because of the thickness of the water and the ice, it would get that way. Then I laid down some of that fake water from I forget what the heck the name of that company is, the train model company, but something
Woodland Scenics?
Woodland Scenics, yeah. I laid down a layer of that. Then what I did was I took and I used Frostbite once again to drew in cracks and stuff like that. If there's a picture of my Glacier King, it's probably the best example of painting ice that I did. And then I put more Woodland Scenics water over that, and that was how I did it. But I would love to see that video of how to actually do it, because mine was a little bit ad hoc.
It's not a video and it's more bases, but it's on Facebook. It's called Brushstroke, and it looks like Twitter is or it's at brushstroke.painter, and he's got a good little thing on how to paint cracked ice bases that doesn't look too difficult. Pretty cool. Requires some advanced techniques, but very cool. I would definitely give that a shot.
There you go.
All right. Legionnaires wants to know. I'm gonna get a second one. This is not actually painting related. Let's switch it up a little bit.
Nice.
He says, what War Machine faction would you suggest to use to challenge newbie Protectorate players to help maximize their learning of the game?
Well, I mean, if you play Crix against Protectorate, they're going to learn a lot about how to use their choir and when to use it and when it's important. I think that Signar challenges Protectorate a lot, because if they're playing a lot of single wound, if they try to play a lot of single wound infantry, they're going to struggle against Signar, and that will help them kind of think about their lists a little bit. I think that that a lot of the traditional shooty lists or shooty factions, like a Legion, will force them to kind of think about how they're making their lists a lot. I don't think I think that there are factions that are probably not good for them to necessarily stretch their wings with. I think Scorn is something that falls kind of into their wheelhouse. So there's some thoughts there. What do you think, John?
I would just go Retribution, because they can inherently ignore the choir so much it'll make them think really hard about what they should be using the choir for. Yep. Because magic guns all over the place.
True.
Or if you want to teach them more on a basic level, not choir related, Circle, because movement shenanigans are kind of Menoth's weak spot, and they need to learn how to set up piece trades properly so that they get the Circle pieces in return, or the Circle is just going to yo-yo them to death.
Yeah, it is. Protectorate does suffer and does struggle sometimes with faster lists, and that's wonderful advice, John.
Boom. All right, Chris McDonald. I'm gonna have a little fun with this one. Do you have any tips or tricks to keep the eyes from looking like they're looking in two different directions?
Yes. The best way to do this is to force yourself to have them not looking straight ahead. If you have them looking out of kind of the corner of their eyes, then what you can do is you can put the pupil of one in here on the outside and put the other one up close to the nose, and that way it'll force it to look like they're looking away, which is always kind of a good default look. And then you only have to put the pupil on one side and you can paint the rest white. What do you think, John?
I think I'm the worst one to ask to make it look like eyes aren't looking in two different directions. For those of you who only listen to the podcast ever, that's sort of my default actual real eyes. It's a joke. I poke fun at myself.
There you go.
All right. We got a little more time for this. Maybe one more, which actually get the last one that's actually not, that's sort of on topic. So it feels like we get enough questions of terrain. We might want to think about a terrain episode soon.
Agreed.
Legionnaires and some other guys have some terrain questions.
We'll do our level best to get to those.
Yep. So Kevin Brook wants to ask, and this is sort of like an earlier one. It's how much detail do you do on a model? Like every little bit needs to be done, or do you let some stuff go for time's sake?
It really depends on what you're driving at to accomplish with the model. If you're,
Mhm.
I mean, my retribution has always been kind of one of these factions for me that I always tried to kind of not spend an eternity on. So I don't ever spend a ton of time on them. So I want to make sure that I've got some okay highlights on it, and I want to spend a little bit of time, but there's none of these are going to be masterpieces. If you're going to want to really try to stretch your technique and really try to do something special with it, then yeah, you should be detailing the shit out of it, because that's what judges are going to want to look at. They want to see the details, and they want to see
Mhm.
that you have really sweated out every last little bit of what that you've squeezed every bit of technique out of that model that it had to give, and it's really going to be a big difference maker for you. So, here's this model. I still have to do all the detail work on this blade over here, and I still need to, I want to put a little bit of yellow ink into the power cords, because the little power nodule things, because that's just what I do with my my things, or green or something
Mhm.
like that. I want to get a little bit more gold on some of these edges, and then I'm going to be satisfied with it. I'll base it, and it will look at least as good as that one.
It'll look fine.
Yeah, it'll look at least as good as the rest of my army, and that's okay with me. So there you go. It's a personal thing, in my opinion, though.
It is. Any brazen detail, anything really visible from further away needs to be done. Because if you don't do it, it just starts to look a little off. Like you, and if you don't do it, it's okay because it's your model. At the end of the day, there's one person on God's green earth who seems to be pleased with your model. It's you.
Yep.
And if you're pleased, you're good enough. But if you want other people to look at your model and go like, yeah, that's pretty good, get all the big visual detail. Like the cows, I'm painting them. And they got these little buckles that close their like coats. And no, I'm not going to paint those things anything more than do a wash and go like, boom, wash, done. I'm not going to make them distinctly different or anything, because across the table you won't even notice. It's not, as I would call it, good detail. It's very fiddly detail. And now if I was painting them for a competition, first I'd smack myself for painting Kazi for a competition. Second, I would totally do them. But for standard tabletop play, nah, as much as you're comfortable with, just try and get the big detail. Like John gets all the big detail on that jack, and it's plenty good. It looks fine. New players will come up, people who don't know come to the game store, be like, that looks great.
Yep. And it's plenty good. It's good enough.
Mhm.
It's good enough. I'm okay with it. I am going to do a little bit more highlighting down here on the cod piece, because I think that's an important part of a Myrmidon to call attention to, because it's the silliest part of the entire jack. So
Yeah, hindsight, Privateer Press, maybe not the best design feature on Retribution models. Giant god pieces.
stop making jacks with junk. We don't need them.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
yeah.
The other thing I'm probably going to do is I'm going to come back with, on some of these really bold highlights, and I'm going to add another layer of highlight below this one, so that it's not such a stark contrast. It's a little bit too stark for me right now. I'm going to come back and I'm going to soften it up just a little bit. One more layer of a little bit darker color, just to smooth it out a little bit. But there you go.
Mhm.
It's 8:19. That means we should get to the media section, John.
We should get to the media section. I got plenty of stuff to talk about. Even some stuff I didn't tell you about in the pre-ramble, because I'm sneaky like that.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Folks, this is like a palace coup we have on our hands right now with the John Spencer. All right, talk to us about your movies for de jour. That's French. Did you know that, John? De jour.
So I'll start with the good fun time.
Okay.
Not what's called a cinematic masterpiece. Crocodile Dundee 2.
Okay.
As I said, I had a slightly long shift on Friday, 14 and a half hours, which is
It's a long freaking
really
time.
rough, but you get through it. And I come home and I'm like eating some dinner, and I'm like, oh look, pop on Amazon Prime, Crocodile Dundee 2. Now, I know you're thinking, John, you watch Crocodile Dundee 2 again without watching Crocodile Dundee 1? I will maintain to this day that Crocodile Dundee 2 is a more enjoyable movie than the first one. The first one's fine, sets up the whole premise of, Michael J. Crocodile Dundee, who becomes sort of famous. They send a reporter from New York to take him to New York to interview him and all, because it was a time when America was fascinated with Australia.
Put another shrimp on the Barbie. That's what they
Indeed.
say there, right? And wombats.
They'd call it prawn, actually, but
Oh, there
that's
you go.
neither here nor there. But this one is more he and the reporter, they mentioned they fell in love, and they had their heartfelt exchange at the end of the first movie. The second one starts off a little slow with him still doing crazy. Oh, look, he's in New York, all this crazy stuff he doesn't know about. But then it starts to get into the story where the reporter's ex-husband is taking pictures and sees a drug kingpin actually murder somebody and sends the photos to her, which he ends up getting. And the drug kingpin finds out and captures her. And it starts from there, where he's got to go and rescue her in his own unique way in New York. And then, since the feds can't protect them, of course, when can they ever?
Never.
He's like, I can protect her, but it's got to be somewhere I can see them coming. Well, of course he takes her to Australia.
That's right. He might have
So
gone on Walkabout then.
Almost, yeah.
There you go.
And it's a fun movie. It's not a great movie. The scenes in New York, it's fun. It's charming fun, like still a little fish out of water. He goes to a gang. He's like, I need you guys to be a distraction so that all these guys with the machine guns, don't shoot me to death. I don't expect you to go in there and help me. I just want a distraction. And he gets them the help by going, what did you do last night? Like, we hung out here. Like, yeah, it sounds exciting. Do you want to, tomorrow night was when I asked you, be like, oh, I hung out here. Or do you want to be like, I watched this crazy guy go storm a fucking castle. And, I was like, okay, that's actually kind of believable. I believe a gang would do that. It is believable in a movie sense.
Fair enough.
He goes in, gets her, takes her to Australia. And, I mean, the only problem with the movie is that there's never any sense that he's in actual peril.
There you go.
As soon as he gets to Australia, you're like, he's going to fucking own them. I mean, it starts off where the Aboriginal guide who's supposed to help the bad guys just walks out like, nope, I'm not helping you get McDundee. Get that noise. And the guys, I mean, it's fun. It's light. It's popcorn movie, as people would call it. It is totally just a popcorn movie. It's a good time, fun to watch, but don't expect anything amazing. After that kind of shift, it's exactly what you need to turn your brain off. I'll give it like 2.5 shots of Kraken. It's like a good, solid action movie.
I was going to say, it sounds like a 2-shot of Kraken kind of movie.
Yeah, in that area, 2.5. I mean, I'd say 2. It's better than most. Mm-hmm. It's still charming. I mean, the chemistry between the main characters is great, and keeps it going. I mean, if you know a little more about Australia, certain things aren't exactly accurate, but hey, still a fun time.
Sounds good. I watched a movie today, actually, John.
Oh,
actually, I watched 2 movies. We'll talk about both of them. One was Godzilla Tokyo Zero, which is part of the early 2000s reboot by Toho. That's available on Crackle, and I fell asleep during that. But it's pretty classic reboot Godzilla. It's got Mecha Godzilla in it, and it's pretty cool.
Hello, you fell asleep during it. That doesn't sound...
I didn't get much sleep the night before because I stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning playing Elite Dangerous. Which I could do an entire episode about that particular night's worth of Elite Dangerous. I almost got stranded in deep space. Bad times.
That sounds like bonus content.
It could be bonus content. And then today we watched 2010, which is the sequel to 2001 with Roy Scheider. This is a movie...
Oh,
go ahead.
I like that movie.
I like that movie. And Belinda and I still continue to say it's a better movie than 2001. Way more approachable.
More enjoyable is definitely the word I would use, the phrase I would use.
Yep. It's maybe not as important as 2001, and certainly not as important cinematically overall, but it is a more watchable movie, much more enjoyable, and really good performances by everybody. A young thin John Lithgow, Helen Mirren, who plays Russian, really
Oh
well.
yeah, absolutely.
Roy Scheider does a nice job of playing Roy Scheider. And,
yeah, well, Roy Scheider, you get what you expect from him.
Yep, absolutely. And they go and basically Jupiter gets turned into a sun, which is super sweet. And then the Russians and the Americans. It's a it's a kind of a fun Cold War period piece too.
It's very optimistic for a Cold War piece, though.
It is, uncharacteristically so. Also, because most Cold War period pieces are no bueno. Usually, it's like everybody gets their flesh taken off by nuclear bombs, because of apocalypse.
Yeah, it's got some really good visuals, some really decent pseudoscience to it, till the end where everything just sort of goes crazy. And Hal is Hal redeems himself in this movie, I feel.
Yeah, oh yeah, he absolutely does. And they work very hard to make Hal into a hero. And it is very noble in the process. It still suffers from a little bit of Arthur C. Clarke hocus pocus. But it's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
And so I give it one shot at Kraken. And it's a nice movie to snuggle up to your love. Belinda and I thoroughly figured we were going to nap to it. And we stayed up. We watched the whole thing because it's just that much fun.
Well, story time. I actually saw that before I saw 2001.
Oh.
But I'd seen bits and pieces, so I sort of got the basics of 2001 before I saw it. But I saw it all the way through before 2001. It was one of my sort of go-to movies in the in my childhood.
That's a damn good movie.
Teenage-ish.
1984, and the special effects hold up really well.
I remember this. There's a spacewalk scene where they're walking over Jupiter over to the Discovery, and even on just a TV. Now we had a big screen TV because my stepfather really loved big screen TV. That was a hell of a scene. I couldn't imagine seeing that in the theater. If they released this damn movie, I would see it in the theater. Because I imagine that scene in like IMAX would be fucking amazing.
Yeah, it would be. It would give you vertigo. If they,
it almost did on TV. That's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. So I highly recommend you get out there and check out 2010 if you haven't seen it. John, what do you got for that cinematic masterpiece that you're going to bring us?
Well, everyone says the original Batman. We'll call it the original, even though we know it's not the original. Pure cinematic Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. Cinematic masterpiece, though honestly it doesn't hold up.
Oh, I don't think it's a cinematic masterpiece. I disagree with that being what they. I mean, I think it's nifty that they got Prince to do the soundtrack.
The soundtrack's actually better than people expect. It's listenable. You could listen to the whole thing all the way through. I had it when I was younger, and I definitely listened to it a lot.
But I think there are other Batman movies that are better.
I would actually also agree. I would. While I agree Nicholson is... Well, we don't agree, but I think Nicholson is actually one of the best Jokers. If you put Mark Hamill in, it's hard to disagree with Mark Hamill.
Yeah. Oh, I think
if you keep it to live
great.
action, I definitely go with Nicholson.
I thought Nicholson was amazing as Joker. I thought that the Joker from The Dark Knight though was better.
He's a lot more serious, realistic. This movie is a comic book movie. It is a comic book on the screen, and the biggest flaws of the movie, aside from some of the effects that are kind of like, I don't recall them holding up at the time. They really don't hold up now. Some of them are just bad. Like there's one in the beginning where like Batman's on top of a building and he turns and walks away and you see him like in shadow, and it's like that didn't hold up when it came out. It doesn't hold up now. It's not good. And towards the end where they're doing the spotlights and the Joker falling to his death, spoiler, it's an old movie. It's not really a spoiler. Scene where it's not even Jack Nicholson. It's just some animated thing that was not very well good, done, honestly. Huh? I feel like it does a sort of disservice to the rest of the movie between that and Batman's absolute willingness to kill whoever the fuck he needs to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't quite say brazenly, but when he's flying around the Batwing, he is murdering a bunch of dudes with machine guns and rockets, plus the most horrible display of marksmanship ever. But other than that, if you take that away, what's her name? The female lead, whose name escapes me right this moment.
Yeah.
Kim Basinger.
Okay.
Kim Basinger and Michael Keaton have good chemistry together.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Keaton is way better as Batman than anyone thought he had a right to, though he does backpedal into a bit too Michael Keaton at times.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, top notch. Jack Palance as Boss Grissom for a while was great.
Mm-hmm.
Billy D. Williams, I thought, had some potential as Harvey Dent. And it would have been better to see him as Two-Face, but they went for the absolute batshit crazy and got Tommy Lee Jones in a later movie, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it's really off. It's not necessarily Batman, because like no one knows who Bruce Wayne is, and sort of the story of Gotham is like, hey, everyone knows who Bruce Wayne is because Bruce Wayne's been there for forever.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily it doesn't like burden you overly with origin story. They have a flashback in which they make Joker the man who killed his parents, which is unnecessary. As a Batman movie, it's kind of mediocre. I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it's definitely not the best. Kind of middle of the road. As a superhero movie, it's absolutely groundbreaking, since it is what I would call one of the first of the modern era superhero movies. It's the first one since Superman that showed you, hey, we can do this, and we can make an enjoyable, good movie to watch.
Yep, absolutely.
And you have to respect it for its groundbreakingness. That being said, if you've never seen it before, Two Shots of Kraken. Like I said, it doesn't hold up well. It's got a good aesthetic. Has some decent action. Batman actually does some detecting. Fucking shock there.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's like he's become not the world's greatest detective in recent years. They need to get back to that. But
yes, they do.
Still a good time. You can probably find it on DVD cheap. I mean, I know when I bought it used for like $2. Just avoid the Diet Coke commercial in the beginning of the DVD, or because it's kind of really. It was like the first time it was a big thing when it came out. The VHS was cheap because it had a Diet Coke commercial in the beginning.
Jesus.
Yeah. So there you go. About Two Shots of Kraken for that. I'll actually agree with that. It doesn't hold up to the modern crop too well. It doesn't have quite the iconicness of Superman, since Batman's been done honestly so well so many times.
Right. Exactly.
And then the one thing I want to finish with that I didn't tell you about in the preamble is a YouTube channel called Cinema Wins.
Cinema Wins.
They're like the opposite of Cinema Sins. They're like everything great about X movie.
Oh.
And while I enjoy watching Cinema Sins, it's funny, good time. This is so much more uplifting. It shows you that positive is so much more enjoyable to watch than negative. I haven't watched their one on Batman vs Superman yet because I'm a little dubious. But they do all the movies that people sort of nitpick the hell out of. I mean, he does Watchmen. He does, Tron Legacy.
Oh, yeah.
He does a ton of movies. Star Trek Into Darkness. He actually made me. I watched that. He made me rethink what I wanted to say about Star Trek Into Darkness, because he brings up a lot of good points in there. And definitely check it out. He just did Avengers Age of Ultron, which is one that people badmouth a lot, even though I think it's a fucking great movie.
Yeah.
Check him out on YouTube. He does a lot of fun stuff. He's definitely a good counter for Cinema Sins, which is hilarious as hell, but positivity always seems so much better to watch than negativity.
Absolutely. That's what we try to do here at the Paying with Menoth John Sunday Night Extravaganza. We want to keep it on the positive tip. So anything else you got for us in there tonight, buddy?
I did watch 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown.
It's a thing.
Our last guest suggested, and put some miles together to it. It was hilarious. Definitely worth checking out at least the first episode. It's great background while you're painting and hobbying. Yeah. Because you only need to watch a little bit whenever they start the countdown portion. The host does fun stuff there while he's.
I remember one episode the guy's doing like a fashion shoot thing in the front while everybody's trying to concentrate, and the mental tasks that they're trying to accomplish are not trivial.
The first episode got more laughs than a lot of modern comedy movies, so
yep,
give it a shot.
There you go. All right, folks, we are going to kick this over to the other camera here, and hey, Ron, folks, we made it through another one of these things, John.
Yes, we did.
So I want to appreciate everybody that came in tonight. Dreammaker, thanks for joining the cronies at the patreon.com/menothjohn. New subscriber. Woohoo! So make sure that you do email to pwmenothjohn@gmail.com what cabinet position you would like to fulfill in the presidency for life of War Machine and Hordes of Menoth John. And by doing that, also, you did claim one of the last bottle openers. So that will be sending along to you directly. We have a couple. Let's see, there's one left after this one. So there's one left at the $5 level. And I'm going to go ahead and cue the music here. Get that going. There we go. There's the music that Bob made famous. You know, folks, every Sunday night we bring you this. We have some fun with it. We hope that you've maybe learned a little. Maybe you're going to try to highlight your model a little bit differently than you've done in the past. You're going to try some movies. You're going to give that Crocodile Dundee a shot. You're maybe going to give 2010 a shot. Or maybe you're just going to have a shot of booze. I don't even know. But don't forget about the Loaded Dice Kickstarter. Don't forget about patreon.com/menothjohn. We like the kind that jingle. We prefer the kind that fold, bitches. It's all good. Keeps the lights going and keeps the green screen coming. All right, folks. On behalf of Mr. John Spencer, I am Menoth John. We will see you here next week on the Painting with Menoth John Sunday Night Extravaganza, this time featuring Mr. David Carl. Good night, everybody.